Hello and welcome to my evaluation question 4. I will be answering the question, how did I use new media technologies in the research, planning, creation and evaluation stages of my production, a short film and 2 ancillaries? Looking firstly at my main production, I started by looking on YouTube at basic short films, regardless of genre and length, just to see what one was, as I'd never really noticed short films before. I then started to whittle down and finesse my searching into the types of short films and genres that I liked watching and that I found really fascinating. And I used the website for websites, WordPress, to talk through and to blog about my journey of discovery. I also then started looking at other short film websites like Short of the Day, where I found an absolute plethora of 5 to 10 minute short films that really egged on this inspiration for my short film Ivory Cage. So now that I have an idea for what I liked in short films, I started to think of how to target a deliberate demographic and psychographic, if I can get that out. So I used the website SurveyMonkey, which allowed me to reach out to people on my social media platforms and ask them what they found entertaining in short films. As for the research of my ancillary tasks, I initially used Google Images for my double-page magazine spreads and short film poster, and then I actually started looking into the paper copy of the magazine Empire, where I found my style model for the Hunger Games. And again, I blogged about this continuously throughout. So moving on now to the planning stage of my productions, I started with the old and rather classic pencil and paper, as I found this is the best way for me to get my initial ideas down and to just kind of develop my thought process. And so I used pencil and paper to sketch out what I wanted to create for my ancillaries and a storyboard for my main production. I then progressed to Coggle, where I could mind map all of my ideas in an organised manner, and again blog about it on WordPress to track my journey throughout this cognitive process. But going back to the paper sketches with the storyboards and whatnot, I found that this kind of kicked off my planning, especially as I could then visualise the shots I wanted based on my style models that I had done in my research stages. Also, to blog about all of the things I'd done on pencil and paper, I used the camera on my phone and Google Photos to transfer them to my blog. I also used Google Docs and Word to transfer and create my screenplay between places easily. So I could also then be blogging, I could be, typing up my screenplay and stuff on the go. Especially given I find that I work best and I'm inspired most when I'm out and about and doing things rather than being stationary at a desk. I find that's the best way for me to create. And this entire production is about a creative process. Okay, moving on to the biggie of the lot, the creation element of my production. I started my short film initially by using the Adobe suite. I knew already from GCSE and my AS and preliminary task how to use Premiere Pro and the really basic tools on there. So I started with that. I started with a new sequence. And I also filmed my production in stages so that I could edit a first bit and then move on and film and edit, so that at the end I had the initial base of my production done, as in it was in chronological order, and then I could just, I find the way I work best with films is to get the base edit down, get all of the nitty gritty stuff out of the way, cut out all of the bad bits, and then really fine tune and edit and focus on the representations created through editing and sound. I filmed my production on a Canon DSLR 700D, as I could take DSLR still shots from my magazine spreads, film poster, and even photo scenes in my film for the photos whilst I was recording to get the precise synergy across all of my 3 products. I also used a classic tripod for my camera to get my crystal stock um, still shots. And I also used a rather new and revolutionary technology to our media department, the gimbal, in which I could get these really crystal clear, smooth tracking shots, which really kind of allow me to tap into this better, I guess, and more professional looking product. And yeah, I learned how to use that by calibrating it and by using the technology there. With my camera, I use the TV mode for filming and the AV mode for my DSLR still shots, as the TV mode worked better for filming, as it provided better focus and clarity throughout the shots, whilst the AV mode allowed me to control the lighting better, meaning I could get the effect I wanted and construct the representations in my film and ancillary products a lot better, I think. I then started to work in Adobe Audition and After Effects, experimenting with sound and colour palettes and whatnot. So we'll start with Adobe Audition and how I use that. I looked at the sound in my piano sequence and found that the sound was actually really bad, which is a lot of my audience feedback points that out. And I tried to level it off so it sounded like it was at the same point in the room, if that makes sense, and the sound was consistent. But I really struggled with this, so I ended up not being able to level it out. However, I did try to kind of control this on the Master Audio in Premiere Pro. Looking at After Effects, I learned a lot, I think, with this new technology. Because I didn't use a lot of it in my AS production, I found it was a rather revolutionary technology. And so I started to experiment firstly with colour palettes, looking at the RGB colours and kind of fine-tuning the effects I wanted to create, and making Aria's face smoother and whatnot. And then I had a look at masking and clipping, not just of the photos in my scene, so that the video could play smaller behind the masked image of the frames, but I also looked at creating my title, Ivory Cage, to go along with the piano music that I found, which, by the way, another point, I found all of my music on online sites such as Bensound and Freesound, and used sound layering techniques that I had kind of learned so that I could build up suspense and create representations of my character accordingly. So yeah, that's how I used After Effects, but going into the effects I use in Premiere Pro, I also, this time in A2, learned how to use the warp stabilizer effect, where I could make the gimbal shots that I got that little bit smoother, as I found they were really they were great. The gimbal like kind of allowed me to make these really cool tracking shots of Aria's face, but still they needed a little bit more stability as they are still handheld shots, and so the warp stabilizer really helped that. But I also then had to re-edit parts because it kind of makes it go a little bit wobbly on certain clips. I don't know what the magic is behind that, but it just does that. But yeah, for my ancillary product, I started by rasterizing the layers in Photoshop of all my documents so they were editable, and changing the colour palettes and with masks so I could erase certain parts of them, especially with the bird cage. I had to individually cut that out and the silhouettes. I also used Word to make sure all of my spelling was correct, as I have absolutely abysmal spelling. Even though I tried to spell really big fancy words, it doesn't really work out for me. And then I cut and pasted that into the Photoshop document so I had no typos and it looked really professional. And finally, we have my evaluation questions and how I use new technologies to create these beauties, as you can see. I mainly used Premiere Pro and went a little bit mad in my question 2 using scientific stuffs to create a little reaction. I did consider using Movely, but I found I really didn't like working with this software. I'm not a fan of Movely. I don't think I'll ever get my head around it. Maybe it's like the inner old person in me, but I just don't like it. But I did use Prezi for my question 3. as I thought it was really, really effective and I liked how the slide sharing worked. However, for my question 3, my original idea, which I actually ended up filming and editing but never uploading, was to do a Skype call between the different versions of myself for the audience feedback. But that never went ahead because I didn't like the video in the end. But I thought the new technology of using Skype to do like a short film club, I really loved that idea. But yeah, it just didn't work out. In any case, so yeah, that's it for my question 4. I guess to say goodbye forever, really, because there's no such thing as A3. I really hope you've enjoyed seeing my journey from start to finish of my A2. So thank you and good night. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.